Welcome to Smile Business Diaries. This episode's guest is a powerhouse dental clinic owner, Dr. Olesya Salathe. In this conversation, she shares a candid account of a patient who reported her to the dental board, how she responded, and what she learned. Now, let's get started. Dr. Olesya Salathe immigrated from Russia to Oregon at the age of 8, seeking religious freedom. After graduating from high school, she worked as a dental assistant before purchasing her first dental practice. Dr. Salathe is deeply involved in community service, earning recognition for her leadership and service, including membership in the American College of Dentists. She co-opened a second location focused on comprehensive dental care and medical services, and she is involved in various professional associations and boards. Dr. Salathe lives on a ranch with her husband and 2 children. Thank you so much for being here today, Olesya. How is everything?
It's so good. Thank you for having me today. It's so special to do this with you.
Absolutely. I think there's a special feeling whenever there's another female in the room in dentistry, and you are this power woman that I adore so much. And I'm so happy to have this moment with you to hear your story, to hear, what life has been in your dental journey and your career and even your personal life. It's all connected. So to get started, would you please tell us your story? I gave a little summary, of your immigration from Russia, but I know there's more there, and I would love to hear.
Yeah, I think that it does start there. My grandfather was really into politics and really was kind of part of the Communist Party. And he traveled and did, speaking engagements, and he had this message. And then in his late 20s, everything kind of blew up for him. He's a really educated man, and he realized that as he started having his own family and raising children, that ability to have freedom to believe what you believe and live a life in such a way that it wasn't really even just about religious freedom, but to be able to do what you want to do and pass along those gifts to your family. And so I was really proud of him. He really spearheaded the immigration of the late 80s of the Soviets to America and to other countries. He was one of 6 men that wrote letters. There's actually a book in Italian called Letters from Siberia. There's pictures of my mom and my grandpa, and he was in prison for it. He was tortured for it. He really, stood up for what he believed in. And so eventually we were able to leave. We did leave when it was still the Soviet Union. We immigrated during a time where you had to give up your citizenship. So when you left the Soviet Union, you didn't belong anywhere. And so once we were outside of the borders, Amnesty International picked us up, and we spent 4 months in Europe, in Austria and Italy. And we were actually supposed to go to Israel. Israel was the only country that would accept Soviet immigrants. But we ended up in the US. We went through the immigration process, and they accepted us. And I think that my worldview was so big from the age of 7 and 8. And, moving to the East Coast, all the way from, we lived on the Sea of Japan. So we really flew all across Asia, Europe, Atlantic, landed on the East Coast. A few years later, moved to the West Coast. And I didn't have any formal education until I was 8 years old. I didn't go to school. My parents did what they could. And so I think that sat with me for, as a little girl. And I knew I had to have a voice, and it was okay to have a voice. And I was the oldest of 34 grandkids on that side. And Grandpa was just, please, education is so important, and you need to find the truth for yourself. I can't tell you that. Your parents can't tell you that. You need to read. You need to learn. You need to talk to those around you, and then form that opinion, and also be respectful of those around you. So that kind of shaped me, I think, in a way that when I said I want to be a dentist when I was like 8, around the same time, I'm just applying those principles of, beginner's mindset. I think you ever heard that from Christian that first time at the residency. And so for me, the dentistry piece was full circle in a way that everything from the sponsors who sponsored us when we came to the US, years later, I realized that Tim, who picked us up from the airport, set up the condo for us, he designed thousands of dental practices for Benko. So my family practice, he actually designed the flow and the architecture. So it was just these little moments that really solidified that that's who I'm supposed to be. And then fast forward to, getting into the grind. I mean, 10 years into practice, I had my family. I had this ground up building, associates started to come in, all these new patients. But everybody wanted something. And we'll talk about it later, probably, that burnout was happening. And then it was like, I think my purpose, I was struggling a bit there. And professionally, there was something that came along right before COVID that really shaped who I was. And it was DSD. So it really inspired me to make some more shifts in my profession and my personal life.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that first office you had and that experience. What was the story? Was it a very traditional, building of the practice, or did you buy out one? What was your process there? And
oh yeah, I actually started working there when I was in high school as a cleanup janitor. I kind of joke. I started out cleaning the toilets, then the instruments, became a dental assistant, and then now I own it. But by the time I came in 2010, the practice had been there 49 years. So it was a very well-established, grounded, but a very traditional practice, heavy in insurance, heavy in the Medicaid side. It was owned by a gentleman that was really, grounded in the community, in the schools. So I learned a lot from him and how to make connections and make relationships, make true, genuine relationships with the community members. And that's kind of the best form of marketing, the purest sense. It's just when you just connect with people. But he also had a son who was around my age, and Steve and I bought the practice together. I was an associate for a year. Second year, we buy the practice. 6 months later, his dad passes away. And 4 months later, the son moves away and I buy him out. So it's just like transition upon transition upon transition. We were in a building that was, 40 years old, needed some updates. I thought I was going to buy it. There's another story there, didn't work out. Really went through a really hard 3 years trying to find even the land to build. So we ended up building a ground up new buildings about 7 years into practice. So that was a fun experience. ADEC is in my backyard. That's where I went to undergrad in that town. And so I got to just really establish this homey place that's very, it feels like home. Patients walk in and they say, this feels like home. And so that's where I ended up as a full owner. But that practice taught me a lot about myself as well, because 49, 50 years of generational ownership of a family. There's a lot to transition. There was a lot for me, when we moved out of being in network with a lot of insurances. When you drop the Oregon Health Plan Medicaid population, that killed my heart. It hurt because I had some wonderful patients, but we figured out a way to see them. When we realized it cost us less money to see some of those families, some of the older patients and kiddos, special needs, than it was to deal with state. So, that was and that shaped my passion for organized dentistry. That's another really big part of my life.
Can you explain that more? What is organized dentistry?
Mm-hmm. I think in the United States, the American Dental Association has been very prominent and very important in the past. I think there's a lot of feelings and thoughts about its importance and relevance now. I know membership is declining. I don't think people see the value in it as much, but from the advocacy level, state to state, the amount of money that goes into like the special political action, changes that are happening state to state, insurance reform. There's just so much during COVID, all the things that were happening. It's a lot that they do. I think from the research perspective, from our materials and products and, the ADA backing and seal, and from the education side and accreditation. So that's kind of the big umbrella, right, that oversees all the states. And then, of course, it's made up of components of the states. So those are the local associations. And then from there, the states had their own components. So I started with my local component, started going to some CE meetings, and I was really fortunate that there was some leaders in my county that, really want to nurture and grow the new dentists. And Pacific Northwest, I would say our District 11 is actually very diverse who's on the board for the ADA. We represent kind of who the dentist is nationwide.
Wow.
No offense to East Coast and South, but their diversity is not what it is on our board up here. And it's been fun to see, things like there's one meeting where we voted on non-live patient testing. So that came out of the ADA that year as part of it. There was ability for dentists to do vaccine shots. So that kind of came into play during COVID. Wow. District 11 really spearheaded that. They got approved. Oregon was the first state to make it a law. It was really neat to see things play out in that way.
Right.
And then locally, I'm on the board of trustees for Oregon Dental Association. I've been in leadership there a long time, and it's everything from, what I just mentioned to mentorship of the young dentists. And then from there, I found, kind of a new position I'm in now. I was a liaison to the Board of Dentistry, and through another personal experience, which we can touch on as well, I went through a board complaint and investigation.
Oh, no.
And DSD really helped me with that one. So I could talk about it. But that inspired me to kind of put my name in the bucket for that. And the governor chose me, and now I'm on the Board of Dentistry. So April was my first meeting, and I get to, I'm on the committee for communications, and also basically, when we have our rules and laws for the dentist and the scope and what we can do, I get to be on that part. So shaping what are the changes coming? What needs clarification? So, aesthetics, for example, that's ever changing. Implants, rulings, it's all to make the public safe. And so I hope to bring some new dentistry, digital dentistry. The board didn't know what to do with all my digital records. Like during my investigation, and they were like, "This is the most comprehensive documentation we've ever seen."
Yes.
But we don't know how to process it because we're so archaic on paper. Yeah.
Hello, I'm just taking a quick break from this podcast interview to tell you how you can get started with DSD. If there was anything that our guest has mentioned that strikes a chord with you, or you are curious about becoming a DSD clinic, I encourage you to book a call with me. This is a 30-minute, no-obligation information sharing session in which I can answer your questions about DSD and discuss your options based on your unique circumstances. The link to schedule a call with me can be found in the notes on this episode. Now, back to the interview. See, to be at that level of leadership in dentistry is like, I think for a lot of people, unimaginable. So, and you didn't just get there overnight, right? So will you share with us the trials and tribulations of your journey and, what you had to overcome to gain this skill set, to gain this experience, to even be eligible for this type of role in dentistry? I know you mentioned a little with the issue of the documentation and all, but share a lot, tell us all the big things that have happened and how you've overcome them.
I think I try to do my best, and I try to have integrity, but I do know that in whatever leadership, role you're in, whether it's professional or personal, might be, I'm a leader for my kids. And integrity is huge. And we all like to kind of espouse that we just have this high level of integrity, but we all have gaps. And our past experiences shape us. I learned this from my communication coaching that I've had for a really long time. This coaching that I've had through Living Wholehearted. So if anybody wants to look it up, they've written a couple of books, that organization, and so I think through tribulations. It came down to, let's say professionally, there was transitioning a family practice. It was a lot where the hygienist has been there for 15 years. She happens to be, the daughter of the dentist that I bought from. And then, coming in here, I am this young woman. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know business that well. I don't, not that well. I just don't know it. I haven't ever heard anything. You have like one business class, a term from maybe the last year of dental school. And you're trying to please everybody. I think by nature, dentists, we want to do the right thing. We feel like we're under the microscope because we work under a microscope. And so I'd say from dentistry perspective, like really, really pushing yourself and always wanting to do what's best. And I think I've naturally had a talent like for art and design. So that piece was pretty easy for me, and I connect with people. So, I grew my practice through families. I would see little kiddos. My kids were little, so that was just so natural for me to just blend in and assimilate. But I'd say the team, that was the big part. I really wanted to please them and not rock the boat. And I think in dentistry, a lot of, consultants say, like, don't rock the boat. Like, come in and try to do things the way that it's been. And looking back, I think that's one of my regrets. I think I spent way too much time trying to please everyone and blaming others. And so, if anybody's listening, if it's somebody from my past that's worked for me, I definitely have some regrets. And, but that, eventually pushed me into this coaching, and I wanted to communicate. And I remember this moment with a hygienist, and our just communication was breaking down. We didn't see eye to eye on perio treatment. I really wanted to go take courses together. And she literally stood in the door of the office and goes, I just don't want to communicate. Said, okay, that's okay. And that was okay, And now looking back, man, how hard it was for her. She had been in that practice for so long, and that legacy that was there. And I didn't honor that and just say, I respect that, and let's just go our separate ways. So I think that piece and the communication through leadership in my state level at ODA, just incredible leaders. Like little things like I had there was a president at one point, Bruce Burton. He's everybody calls him Coach. If you're in the ADA, you will know Bruce as well. But he taught us this in our meetings. He would bring these stuffed animals. Stuffed animals, what the heck? And he would have a donkey, and there was a rabbit, there was an owl, there was an elephant, and it was just this friendly way of like, hey, if you're going off on the tangent and you're going down a rabbit hole, you take the rabbit and you throw it down. Like, if that makes sense. If you're being an asshole, you throw the donkey at them. I got the rabbit a lot. If you say something wise, that person in the meeting that's just quiet, and then when they speak, you're like, everybody just stop, and listen. That was the owl, the smart owl. So little things like that I picked up along the way.
So throw donkeys at people when I have issues with them from now on.
Much nicer, than calling them an asshole. But I think it's this kind of fun and silly, but those are the lessons in communication are letting someone speak out to their truth, recognizing and honoring them, and also having moments of, okay, time to move on. So I needed to do more of that. In the past, I talked so much, didn't listen enough. And at the end of the day, it spilled over into my family life, my kids, my work, my patients, professional organizations. And while it's fun, it's fun to do these things and know that change can happen at all of those levels if we allow that space for communication.
So would you say that the coaching helped you become a better communicator, better leader? And how did it work out with that hygienist? What was the end of that story there?
I think she went off and she is happy in her life, and that it did prompt, we started coaching as an organization, our whole team, that year. And it's based on the CVI, core value index, kind of similar like DISC. And so we went through that, upon hiring, we would, even when we would look at a position and think, well, what kind of personality type do we need for that? And lean into those qualities. I will say now that as we've grown bigger, I do think it's harder to keep up with those things. And I'm working on bringing some of that back. We've lost it a little bit. But I do think it's helped to build stronger relationships with the team members.
For sure. So for those that are struggling with their team right now, I think it's very common, really. You buy out an office and then the team comes with it, and they're so used to the past and they don't want to change, or maybe they're employees that you've hired and they just don't want to implement something new. What have you personally done in those situations? What was your situation and how did you overcome it?
I think the first 7-8 years until we hit the new space, it was a lot of me just talking. And I assumed that everybody got that information and understood it and retained it. But they didn't. So 7-8 years into it, I stumbled upon a book or a process called Traction with Wickman. One of my friends had implemented it in the company that he worked with. And so we were really fortunate in that in our area in Oregon, we had one of the top, Eric was anywhere between 1 and 2 in the world of the top implementers for Traction at the time. And so he came on board and we started our quarterly meetings. We got organized, we identified our core values. So I think that's the part. I didn't know what my core values were. I thought it was just dentistry, and communication. So that was big. You have to identify those. And then, of course, there's processes. I don't think there was clarity in processes. So fast forward now, 14 years later, we still use a form of Traction for our meetings. It's now called Bloom Growth. It's an app, online application that we use to track our meetings or issues on the clinical side. And then we have different departments. So now we have the family practice, we have the aesthetic experience family practice, aesthetic experience has 2 different practices under its umbrella. So we have the dental side that's comprehensive, concierge, rehabilitation, cosmetic clinic. And then we have the medical side, which, it's a separate entity. From the outside, it looks like we're all kind of the one clinic, but the patient feels the same experience. But on the back end, we have different teams. And so we will use Bloom Growth for that. We use an application called Sweet Process. So Sweet Process is a way to document your processes and your policies. It's a way to onboard your team. Any new employees that come on, they're able to be assigned, if I want to schedule a new patient, okay, we're going to assign you the Sweet Process. And 10 times you got to do it. You put the patient's name, task, click. Everybody loves their phone tasks. We use Asana for our, day-to-day tasks or recurring tasks. Team members can assign it to each other. And then we use Google Workspace. We have by clinic built out, everything from our legal documents down to, onboarding to spreadsheets that we have, sheets that we used for tracking our lab cases. You know, we use those for sales and reports. I mean, just lots and lots of,
Right.
applications to help us work asynchronously. And I feel like I learned that word from DSD as well. So it inspired me. Like, okay, got to get organized. So yeah, besides communication, you have to have these. So now with, medical side, brand new practice, we're working with physicians, NDs, with nurse practitioners, with RNs. And it's really neat to see that the way to build a process, to build a program, to evaluate your marketing, sales, funnels, what's working, what's not. It's all documented. And we know what I love too is in the Google Workspace, there's a history button and you can see who's gone in where and how much time they spend on it. And then kind of micromanaging. We don't try to do it, but it's been helpful.
Yes. I mean, I think it's amazing a lot of the technologies out there that dentists aren't really utilizing to make their lives so much easier. And I mean, you've mastered this craft, not just in your organization, but your image, your branding, right? I don't know anyone else, and I'm being completely honest, and I hope I'm not hurting any feelings out there, but you have demonstrated such an just exceptional level of your brand and your image out in the world. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I almost feel like sometimes it's when you're too good, it can almost hurt you, because I'll speak on behalf of DSD. We struggle sometimes with how our branding is really good. It's really great. And we've created this image where it almost is like people will define you based off of that. And it's not always the reality, right? So you've got the medical, the dental, you again are exceptional in your image and how you are viewed, the patient perception out there. So how can you walk us through your process, how you came about that? How did you do it? It's amazing, really.
First of all, huge recognition to my sisters. My baby sister had been my assistant for, the whole time, 14 years. And then 34 years ago, this idea came out between my middle sister and myself to start something together. And I would say that when I knew the Dentist of Maine had its own branding and that piece was my brainchild, but then AE, when it came about, that's so much of we have a marketing in-house, person. We have additional, support from outside of our practice. On the AE side as well that we've had from the get-go since before we opened. So I think that the imagery, it's perfected, and so much props to them, because we have Instagram, and even though we don't, we have maybe 4,000 followers, they're good quality followers. They interact, they look, they listen, they're not fake. It's real. And so I couldn't, and all the processes I mentioned, the Google Workspace, making sure everybody has an email in your organization. A lot of dentists don't do that. They're like, I'm going to save money on an email. You need to have a work email. But things like that, that's been such a big project and undertaking from Jen. I will say that as a dentist, the last couple of years, I've been, for personal reasons, that we've gone through some life changes in our home life. We were taking care of a sick parent. That with the transition of life and then just the new space here, we've definitely, I stepped away quite a bit. To be honest, the last year, if you looked at any content, I really had little to do with that. And that was a lot, that was a team. They do a fantastic job. But I think patients are getting, the user out there sitting on their phone, they are getting more savvy to AI and perfectionism. So I think we are currently now kind of discussing of how do we shift our brand. Right. And I know Jen has her own personal page that she used to be on the mortgage real estate side. That's morphed into more like coaching and business side. And I still haven't transitioned that. I think that's my next shift in my life is what's my voice now? It was very different 2 years ago, I had to go through this journey, and I almost like went through a withdrawing a little bit from the family practice. Here clinically, I would kind of do my clinical thing, but now I feel kind of it's spring. It feels like spring again.
Right.
My family is really settling in our personal life, and the kids and my husband. He just started a new job this week. He's been a stay-home dad for 9 years, and now he's off into the world again. So we're just, but the branding is, it's big, and people connect, and they think if it's too polished and structured, I think that's where my board complaint kind of came in. I attracted, some of the patients that we attract are there. They want that immediate, or there's high expectation. And, thank goodness for the complexity and the detail of our documentation. And I was able to take all of that and show the board, and it was
Can you talk a little more about that? What exactly happened?
Yeah.
I mean, how, because I know a little bit about it, but I haven't heard the full story. And I think it'd be very interesting because it's something a lot of people face, right? But it's not talked about enough how to handle it when it comes up. So what happened? How did you handle it? And what can be done in the future to prevent this from happening to others?
We were first year in a new space, and we got this beautiful, beautiful gal, and she wants those in here. She wants the perfect look. Very sweet. I will say there was a little bit of a language barrier, but it's my own, language, my first language that I speak. So we connected. I think during the test drive, the husband was there. I think looking back, I think he didn't want her to get the teeth done, the veneers done. He liked her how she was. So we went back and forth. We had actually 2 appointments for try-ins. We documented everything from their reaction to, oh my gosh, I love it. We get down all the way to treatment planning. Of course, ortho's recommended. It's a deeper bite. I say, listen, and the way that the teeth sat, I knew that ideally if we did not do ortho, she would end up kind of a thicker restoration on the posterior. She really wanted minimal prep or no prep. Of course, there's cavities there. I tell them, we have to cut through that. You have cavities, so they're going to be, some of these will be more like a 3/4 cut. We've documented it all, gave them the options. Thank goodness for Weave. It records phone calls, everything is like,
yes, digital. All your systems.
Yes. And so we get all the way down to delivery. She's not sedated. She actually was never sedated for any of her appointments. She says yes to the temporaries, right? The modifications. She comes in, delivery. Right off the bat, and I explained to them, I'm going to try in tooth by tooth. I look at the margins. If I see something, I will let you know. We tried in. She wanted bleach one, low translucency. Like, give me the brightest tooth, right? And so we go to deliver. There was 3 margins that I did not like. And he said, hey, we are not going to deliver these permanently. We are going to deliver the rest of them, rescan, and you can wear these. Aesthetically, they look great. We will deliver these with temporary cement and have you back for the 3. So she's off. And then the next night, at 10 p.m., we get this message from the husband, and you lied and you said you weren't going to shave her teeth. It came down to, he asked her to remove them. And I'm how many times? It's all communication, right?
Right.
And so then we kind of went back and forth. We got my liability insurance involved. Said, I'm not going to give you the whole thing back. I'm not going to refund you the whole thing. We had the restorations in place, the new ones. She refused to come in even for post-op. I don't even know what things look like. I don't know how they feel because I haven't seen you. You haven't held up your end of the deal.
Right.
And we're trying to communicate. And so it kind of came down to, we refunded them a portion. They signed this document saying they can't sue us, they can't talk about us, they can't review, but ultimately they can still file a board complaint. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I get a board complaint. And that started off a almost an 8-month long process. And that's nerve-wracking. You have to submit your spore testing, your CE records, all practices that you work at. They're looking at you at all of, what was the complaint, but also all the other things that you have to stay in compliance. And then 300 pages later, we submit everything, and the investigator investigates, and they do an interview. You walk through, you kind of get your side of the story, your records. And I learned some things like, for my associates, even some things like I need to keep track of their CE. We might want to take all the DSD classes, but we also need cultural diversity, and we need medical emergencies and things like that really matter. And so processes, it really helped shape and improve some of our processes. But the one thing I will say, I was stressed, and I had extra stress because I am a part owner of a medical practice, and that scared me. Like, am I doing that right? Am I right? I'm under the microscope.
Mm-hmm. That the medical was new at that point. It was like you were starting to build, right? Okay.
Yep. And Oregon, every state has different practice ownership laws. And so in Oregon, you could be 49% non-MD owner. And so, I was worried about all of that. But I never lost sleep, on the case, I would say, because there was so much documentation. And then, they came back and just said, hey, everything looks good. And now on the back end, having gone through one session of reviewing these complaints and making decisions on it on other cases, hygienists and dentists, wow, the boards, they see that. They see the communication. And I think if you do your best effort and you try to do what's right and make it right with the patient, they are understanding. So I think if you just keep your processes, don't be too stressed. I think that's the message I want to bring to dentists. And if you don't have a way to document your processes in your patient journey, on especially these large cases, implant cases, right? If anything, I think on the liability side, if you are a DSD clinic, if you're a COIS trained clinic, if you're a traction clinic, business, you should be okay, because you are always evolving, always learning, and that is seen if something happens like that.
Absolutely. I talk to a lot of doctors, and we obviously know the benefit of that big treatment planning expertise with DSD Planning Center and how it helps, specifically what you went through, but also just being able to deliver the treatment and consistently, right? So I hear a lot of times from doctors like, oh, I could do it, but I don't need to do that, right? And they justify, and what it comes down to is the savings. It's, we're being cheap. That's what it comes down to, honestly, if we're being real.
Can I tell you the products that specifically kind of saved me?
Absolutely, please.
And to say, I didn't remove extra tooth structure. I did, the planning itself, right? We showed that simulation of ortho. And if you don't do ortho, that pre-ideal, what that looks like. An ideal is supposed to be.
Really?
You had that option, right? Also prep guides. I always tell my patient, listen, I can't draw a perfect circle, but if I can take this cup and I can trace it, then it's ideal. And I was able to say, listen, I use prep guides. This is my technique. This is what I do every time. Then the next level was using a digital lab. I was able to overlap and do a time lapse in iTero to say, here's the temps, here's the modification, or here's a try-in, here's a modification for the temps, and here's the finals. And the teeth that I said that we were going to redo, I think there was one or two where the angulation was off or incisal edge was off a little bit. So you're right. Yep, you're right. That was my post-quality assessment. And I told you it needed to be redone.
Right.
But you're holding me to the standard of, that there's perfection. There's no perfection in dentistry. You can't tell me that you prep a perfect prep every time, that you reduce the exact amount every time. So I think having those systems in place, and then also we went to that level of, we contacted DSD at that time. They had done, DSD was the one that did the restorations. And I said, can you measure every single veneer and give me the exact thickness?
Yeah.
And so they gave you the exact thickness, and it was like spot on, like everyone, like down to 0.02, 0.2 millimeters. And it really gave me that confidence. Like even before I got the final verdict, I was just like, here's the information and you can sleep. Like, why? How much does sleep cost you?
So, I think this is a little controversial in dentistry, right? Is because you have those doctors that understand and they're like, guided dentistry is why not, right? Why put yourself in that situation? But then you have these other dentists that are like, I've been doing it this way forever. My skills are exceptional. I don't need guides. I don't believe in guides, that sort of thing. What is your opinion on that?
I think we all build confidence with time, right? And I think we look at our failures. And I think for the most part, you could do most of it in tried and true method and what works in our hands. But I think until something happens,
Right.
then, you kind of evaluate of, what could I have done better? But overall, I think you should be improving. You should be looking to how can it be improved? It comes down to that limitation of whether it's your integrity or your clinical skills. We all have gaps. You can't tell me that you know it all. But think of that level of planning and communication. I think that's the other thing, right? You might be great with your hands, but the communication piece is sometimes the biggest thing also to your lab, let's say, right? If you've got the guides, you've got the go-bys, you've got the documentation, it speeds up processes, it improves efficiencies, improves the outcomes, and it builds trust all around.
Right. So
would you
say, going through it again, is it a no-brainer at this point for you now? Like, big case, do the full documentation workup regardless? Is it very clear for you as a standard?
It is. I can't unwind all of that. Yes. I went back to the dentist office 2 months ago. I had an associate that bought a practice, and I was there on Mondays doing ortho anyway. They're like, no, we're going to jump into restorative a few days. And I think it's good because it's kind of, I took my main key players that did this type of dentistry with me to AA. So now to be able to bring it back there and really help my other associate learn those techniques has been really fun to see. But doing just general dentistry and exams, I am like, okay, the hygienists are like, I can't unsee it. I can't undo dentistry in that way. And, I have my own, do I submit every case to DSC? No, but I know that I'm going to use my Antero to scan and do a clean check, and I'm going to look at the design. And, there's other platforms we can use. We're also a CERC practice. So, we experimenting with 3D printing. And so, but all those, the philosophy of how to plan, you can't unchange it anymore for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's who I am now, and I'm so grateful for it.
Amazing. I think you're extremely great at, taking on new approaches and trying things out before it's completely a habit or protocol in your practice. How have you been able to overcome any hesitations of, new technologies out there and systems in place? How do you choose which system to put into your practice? And what do you believe is inside yourself that's so unique to allow you to do this? Because I see it so often. It's like, it's there, the solution's there, but we just can't bring ourselves to allow even a trial of it. There's something in some people that it's like, no matter what, I can't go into the future for some reason. And you're just one of those pioneers. And a lot of, really most of the DSC classes, if not all, have that special gift. And so if there's a way to share that information, how would you tell people out there?
Yeah. I don't think I'm the earliest adopter. Like there's like a new iWatch or whatever comes out. I'm not the first to jump on that. I am pretty good at seeing all the things around me, and I'll just kind of marinate on it. I'm a merchant innovator, which is people person first, and then communications, and then the innovation piece. I see so many B's, and I have had to hone in. I would say when I see all the solutions, and then I'll kind of pick and choose, like what will work best for the team, what will work best for the patient, what will work best in my workflow, and then I'll kind of jump on it. And I've learned that when I do that, I'll implement it, I'll start it, I'll onboard it, and then I'm like off to the next B, or at least I have in the past. And in the past, I never gave my people who then are like, okay, we've caught up with the idea and we're implementing. And now I want to perfect it. So my builder bankers who are like highly detailed, they want to see the A dot B. So now I've learned, that's the one thing in communication I've learned to marinate longer on it. So I'd say I've slowed down my adoption of new things so I can allow the space for the teams to fully experience that and fully test drive it before moving on to the next. And I think the other thing is just financially, like you can't keep buying everything.
Right.
And so that is, I would be in trouble if there was no financial limitations.
That's all in.
Because I do love new technology and apps and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, I try to think of it from the innovator side. What are all the B solutions, and how do they impact all the people that are going to be in use of this technology or process?
Beautiful to hear, because I think a lot of people, when they make their decisions, it's like, how is this going to help me personally, right? And so what I heard from you is you put yourself last in your decision-making process. It's like, how is this going to affect everything around me? Because again, tell me if I'm off at all, but it's almost like everyone around me, if they're happy, then I'm happy, right? And that's kind of like the consequence of how you're deciding things for your practice, for your family, for your team, and all of it. We're getting near the end, so I just want to ask you, a final message or a takeaway that you can share with people that are listening. I didn't get into as much as I would hope to with you. You got so much great information to share, regarding just your story in general. I mean, it's the American dream story, right? You've come from Russia and in a very hard time, and you had that influence of your family and seeing that struggle, that plays a huge impact, of course, on who you are as a person. But just your struggle of building your new practices and growing, expanding now into medical, and your branding, your image. You have mastered a lot of things that people struggle with a lot in dentistry, and I talk to them about it constantly. And so I use you as an example. I don't know if I've ever told you, you're that example person that I think a lot of us in dentistry can look at and say, Olesya did it. She's doing it in Oregon, of all places. So what would you tell everyone that admires you, that believes in you? What would you share with them to let them know, hey, this is where you need to focus?
Mm-hmm. I mean, all the words that you said, I feel like maybe that's the image that's out there, but I don't have it figured out. It's like a day-to-day thing. You have to keep working on your mindset. What's next? What you said, you want to make sure everyone's okay around you. I know I'm wired that way, but there are things that there's an expense that comes to that. And so it's not all of the success and the image and, learning all the new things. It's not worth it if it comes at a price of your family, right, and your faith and, those around you. And I'm really, really lucky that I am surrounded by my sisters. That is, I think, a huge piece of it. It starts with Grandpa, and this is like the perfect timing today, this morning. Jen's in Mexico for her 40th. And to be honest, I can't afford to take the time to go to Mexico. And I can say this, one of us has to be here to run this machine, and is it worth it? Right. And we all struggle. But it is worth it if you know your why, and if the people around you, and the why, who you're doing it with and who you're doing it for. And so that's the other thing is our teams. I mean, it's not me. I'm just like standing on their shoulders, and me and Jen, we look like we're doing it all. And people do say that, but our team is incredible. But it took a long time to build those teams. She brought in her mortgage team. Now in the dental, like who knew that they were going to be, selling teeth, or weight loss, or lips, or injectables, or IV hydration, or it's my dental team. I mean, it's transitioned a lot over the years. And Ola, my baby sisters, then the key team member, and then a few other team members that have really stuck with it. So pick the people wisely around you, but also check yourself periodically on what you want the goal to be.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful information. Thank you for your time, for sharing your story, for just honestly existing. I mean it when I say you're an inspiration to people out there, and it's wonderful what you've been able to accomplish. So thank you so much. I hope to speak with you again soon. See you somewhere in another country soon. Party it up with ESD and all that fun stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, if there's somebody that wants to learn more about your practice and how you manage your business, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
You can find us online, through social media. We've got a number of accounts. We've got AE by Design. That's the aesthetic experience. We've got the Dentist Off Main, which is our family dental practice. You can find me. Just look up Olesya Salathe. I think I'm the only one in the world with that name. That's more of my personal page, but you can, if you want to watch my journey of building that's to come. And then Jen Z. Spooner is my sister, and a lot of the business side, little tips and tricks and things, that's on her page. So follow her. Like, she's got it all figured out there on that one. I'd say that's the easiest to find us, but you can also email me, olesyasalathe@gmail.com. That's more my personal one. Got questions, I welcome them, and hope to. And you can probably find me at like local association gatherings if you're in Oregon.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you again for sharing. We'll definitely be in touch, and I hope the family and everything's doing well, and you get over to Mexico soon. If not to celebrate today, soon enough.
Yes, we have something up our sleeve for our birthday here.
Good.
Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please be sure to like and share it with your professional network. In the next episode, I talked to Dr. Publio Silva. If you subscribe to Smile Business Diaries, you won't miss it.